Okay, so two topics that we're going to talk about today. Let's start with the first one. How to learn from everyday interactions. This was your baby, so I'm
Yeah.
curious to hear what you think about it, and then you can pass back to me.
Cool. So from my side, obviously, I think your daily interactions are an essential part of your overall life development. I think your daily interactions firstly shape your future, and then number two, also significantly shape your personality. So learning from those interactions is very key in terms of you understanding yourself better so that you can navigate the future better and also develop relationships that can allow you to advance yourself going forward. So, what I mean by that is that in your daily interactions, you obviously have, things you interact with from a life perspective, being your challenges, your tasks, um, obligations, etc. But then you have people, of which for me are a gateway to a wealth of knowledge about the world, about themselves, and also about yourself because it is in those engagements that you get direct feedback from them about yourself and also direct feedback from them based on how you respond to their reaction,
Mm,
to your interaction with those people.
mm,
So I like to focus on that a lot. I think you've noticed like I always make time to try have at least two meetups with old friends every single month.
mm,
Because it is in those sessions that I discover a lot more about myself through understanding how I'm responding to what they're saying to me, and also taking their feedback about life based on their experience.
mm,
So, yeah, I think that is an essential part of everyone's, day-to-day learning. And if you can't really be conscious of that, then you fail to learn from other people's life experiences, right? Because the school of life is something that is extremely important. And I believe that the school of life isn't one that is based only on your experiences. If you want to experience everything, you're going to waste a lot of time and you're going to feel a lot of things that you don't have to feel,
mm,
you know? But if you can tap into the school of life of other people through conversations, you're then able to shorten the road that you have to walk to kind of understand that experience and then take advantage of it
mm.
um, in alignment with your plan. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on it, eh? What are your thoughts on learning from your daily interactions?
So the two things that I took away from what you were saying was listen to the feedback about yourself that you're
Yeah.
receiving from the world around you, right?
Yeah.
And the second is trying to pay attention to what other people are trying to tell you so that you can learn from their experiences.
Yep.
Um, for me, what I'm going to say is very complimentary to what you're saying. Like, I'm not saying anything revolutionary here, but it's all about being present. You know, for me, if you're operating on autopilot, the day flies away from you. You're
Yeah.
not really paying attention and you're not registering the potential lessons that you could learn from the feedback that you're talking about there and
Yeah.
the lessons that people are sharing.
For sure.
So not getting so caught up in your head that you aren't witnessing what's going on around you. That's key for me. The second thing is for me the practice of reflection. So and I know you're the same, we both like to journal. I've noticed in myself, even if I don't go back to something that I've journaled, just the simple act of writing it down solidifies it in my mind so that I can keep it with me in my toolbox of lessons that I've learned, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you wanna progress in your life in the sense that you're not repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. And it's okay if you do find yourself doing that. Like it's human. Often we don't get it right first time. when you become aware of something,
Yeah,
sometimes you need to fuck up a couple of times before the lesson
yeah,
actually sits with
for
you.
sure, for sure.
Um, so yeah, and then the third thing, which is actually very similar to what you said about learning from other people's stories and their experiences, I had be aware of examples that are both good and bad.
Sure.
So, you know, you hear that phrase, you're the average of the five people that you spend the most time with. And it's a very popular phrase nowadays. Like every self-improvement person talks about it a lot because it's true.
Yeah,
But you
yeah,
don't always have control over the five people. For
yeah.
example, if you work in an environment where
Fair
the
enough.
people around you are kind of sucky, it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
100%.
if you want to be hardcore, you could say you should quit your job and find somewhere else to work. And that's possibly true, but it's never that simple. If you find yourself surrounded by bad examples, then try and reverse engineer it and be like, okay, that's what they're doing. I should definitely not do that. But be sensitive
100%.
to it. Pay attention to it. Don't ignore it and just suffer with it. Like learn and
For sure, for sure.
turn it into an advantage.
And I like that example that you used, right? And I think a lot of the time when I think like phrases or quotes become popular, I think people simplify them a lot into the format that is most easily understood,
Mm,
you know. But the reality is, like you said, not at every point in life will you have four people greater than you.
mm,
You know, there are times in life when you are the greatest in that five, and it is your responsibility to
so,
carry others on your shoulders, right? And then
absolutely.
there's a time in life when you're at the bottom of that pyramid.
Yes.
Um, and I think like many a times we see it, like, I mean, if I look at great leaders like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or whatever,
Yeah.
they obviously are perceived to have been that great people in their pot of five, you know. But based on them, when you speak to them, when you hear their reflections, they were the bottom of that pyramid. They were actually carried by other people. So I think context when it comes to that is very important.
Absolutely.
And everyone is great in different ways, right? So that
Absolutely.
judgment of like the average of five people needs to be looked at in different formats. Like you can rank your five in like financial stability, you can rank your five in spiritual, you know, enlightenment, discipline, health, fitness. There's so many ways to look at it, right? And I think the most optimum way to look at those five is to say, how diverse in terms of those rankings are the five people around me?
Absolutely.
And in which element am I the greatest and in which element am I the weakest? And I think once you can like look at that, then regardless of the five people around you, you will be the bottom at least in one or two. And
Absolutely.
that's enough to justify your circle.
Well said. That's actually exactly what I was going to say while you were talking. I thought the same thing. It's like have some humility and realize everyone's got different strengths and weaknesses. And I don't know where we were talking about this, but I remember I mentioned the concept of managing your frustration with other people, where I was
Yeah, of
saying if you find someone irritating, you must remember that people find you irritating as well.
course.
It's great to remember that because it gives you grace and
Yeah,
humility, and it makes
yeah,
it easier for you to forgive others of their shortcomings. Same
100%.
way, you are the bottom of someone else's top five.
Yeah. Literally,
So,
it's just how it is. You can't control someone's top five, right?
yeah,
You can't.
if you're the most jacked guy in the gym, you're probably the worst read guy. And if you're the
Yeah,
most well-read guy, then you're probably not the strongest guy. And
yeah,
so, so
100%.
forth. So
100%.
yeah,
100%.
have some humility.
Yeah.
But
But yeah,
I do want to say one thing. Just going back on the subject of reflection, I think this is a very important thing because if you think about it, your memories is your life.
yeah,
And it's actually scary how little you remember about your life if you really think about it. You know, your brain only has so much capacity. So you just want to make sure that you're remembering the right stuff and you're taking responsibility for that. So when you
mhm,
have this practice of reflection, you can make sure that your monkey brain is not at the wheel and
for
making
sure.
So that the only stuff you remember is the time you tripped in grade 5 in front of your class and everybody laughed at you. Like that's
Yeah,
not important. You don't need to remember that. Like
100%,
let's focus
100%.
more on like the lessons you've learned that can serve you going forward instead of having a hamster loop of just bad memories and moments because that is very common. It's a
100%.
lot, and negative emotion is an easier thing to remember than positive, right?
Mm, mm, mm,
Fear is such a
mm.
powerful driver. So,
And and I like that, right? The power of reflection, right? And I want to use a really good example here with this format of mirrors.
mm,
So I was reading a very interesting book the other day, and it said in that book, if you looked at a mirror the last time today for the next 10 years, you would forget how you look. You'd
mm,
actually forget how you look. And your mind would identify how you look to the last time it saw itself in the mirror.
mm,
And I like what you mentioned there around you need to reflect so that you can understand where you are and how you're doing, right? And that's the same thing like with mirrors, we use them every day because you
yes,
want to check, does my haircut still look all right?
yeah,
Like, do I have anything on my nose?
yeah,
Like, is my beard too big or too small? ETC, all that is a format of reflection, right? How do I see myself, and are other people seeing myself the way I see myself?
mm,
Based on the reflection that I'm seeing in the mirror.
mm,
And I think the closer you get to the mirror reflection, the more you're able to live out loud and the more you're able to make accurate decisions about where you want to go and what you want to learn. So
mm,
yeah, I think it's not taken seriously enough, in my opinion, in our lives. A lot of people tend to not reflect. And like you said, most of life is memory, right?
mm,
We tend to go through life on autopilot. We
mm,
get into uh, the law of motion influenced by the law of hypnotic rhythm, where you're just doing the same thing, right? And the only way to disrupt or to remember is to reflect.
absolutely, absolutely,
Um, so so yeah, I think that practice is quite important. I mean, we could speak on that forever, but I just wanted to add that um, as we segue into the next topic based on what you said just now.
yeah. And do you know what? Before we jump, I just want to say, you know, we spend so much time looking at mirrors to see how we look, but we should make sure that we're spending time looking into the mirror of reflection to see what does our soul look like,
Yeah,
character, and our actions.
100%,
What does our life
100%.
look like? And that one's not so easy to see because
Yeah,
we don't have that sort of mirror all around us, you know. And it's what's kind of scary is like with social media moving in the direction that it is, especially Instagram. I'm going to use Instagram.
yeah,
Everything is so visually orientated that you're so driven to focus on your appearance that your
yeah.
character, even like things are performative, right? Like people are doing these things to get viral. They don't even mean it in real life. So
Mm,
you're talking about the law of hypnotic rhythm. I would say something that complements that is the law of cultural influence
mm,
that hijacks that
yeah,
hypnotic rhythm, right? So
100%.
it's so important for us to reflect and have this mirror so we can make sure that we look inside the way we want to instead of the way the culture pushes us to. Not to go too tinfoil hat on
Yeah,
the podcast, but like it is scary when you think about it like that because
yeah,
it is easy to fall. There's a Greek myth about I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation because I only ever read it, but about this demigod who his name was like Narcissus or something like that, and
yeah,
obviously linked with the phrase a narcissist, and he was a beautiful, beautiful man. Like
yeah,
everybody that saw him was in love with him, and he was at this lake where the river spirits were all infatuated with him, and then he saw his own reflection in the water, and he was hypnotized by this reflection and he couldn't escape from that. It was like a trap. He trapped himself. And he spent the rest of his eternity basically looking at himself in the water. And it's a myth with a cautionary tale about the dangers of being so focused on the appearance and so focused
yeah,
on And social media is a bit like that if you think about it, because people are so
Yeah.
focused on themselves.
And think about it, right? Like, I mean, I can speak of this a lot because generally, I think I've detached from fitting in from an appearance perspective.
Mm.
And what I've noticed is that when you don't fit in from an appearance perspective, in the sense that so well dressed, brands,
Yes.
updating cars, etc., etc., people don't do that willingly,
Yes.
right? People think they're doing it willingly, but they're subconsciously doing it because of a pressure that you are not aware of.
Yes.
And when you're not aware of it, you're actually happy doing it, right?
Absolutely.
Until you get a moment of enlightenment where you're like, oh, I don't need this, right? And I mean, in layman's terms, most men get it. It's called, that's what you call a midlife crisis.
Mm.
When you realize, oh shit, I don't need half of the stuff that I thought I needed. And these basic things that I need to actually make me happy. And I'm not saying I'm a master of it,
Sure.
but I do believe that the early detachment of material or like physical desires or objections um, does bring you closer to understanding the true meaning of life.
Mm.
Obviously, too much detachment is dangerous. Because you
Sure.
turn into a hippie and like you don't bath or you wear like
Yeah,
clothes that
of
are,
course. Then you're missing the point.
yeah.
Yeah.
But to coexist with it, but not dwell into it, for me, is the ultimate sweet spot. And I
This
think
is,
once you can master that, you
yeah.
know, you can master your finances, you can master your relationships, you can master any form of addiction, and you just have a lot more control over how you respond to life and the daily decisions that you make, you
Mm.
know, on a day-to-day basis.
What an
So yeah, I'm not
awesome,
sure what you think about that, but that's just
such a
my 2 cents on that topic.
awesome answer, T. I love that. You know, it's like the concept of a monk living in a cave by himself. You know, how enlightened are you if you have to remove yourself from the whole world just to find peace?
Yeah,
You're not serving anybody with that. The
100%.
best that can be said about you is that you're a neutral force on the world, not making it,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, great point. I think we
And
can
you know what, Zaid, just to tap onto that, like, I'm not saying fitting in is a bad thing, but standing out in a good way is a really amazing thing,
absolutely.
right? And if I like just think back to some of the most powerful or most influential people that I've met in a personal perspective, they've all been so different from the crowd. They're leading the crowd, but they're so different from the crowd. You know, be it in the way they dress, be it in the way they speak, be it in the way they think, plan, strategize, lead.
Mm.
They do it in such a way that they're part of the 20%. But the people that I believe we tend to follow, try to get there, but the barrier is the fact that you're like everyone else. It is a barrier on its own,
It
right? Fitting
is.
it is a
It is.
barrier.
Yes.
And it's the minute that you cross the barrier of not fitting in
Yep.
to benefit the people who are fitting in is when you win and is when you get a following, is when you can enlighten others, etc., etc., etc. But it is in that embracing of your individuality
Mm.
that you become powerful and relevant to all those who are being the same.
It's a
You know?
beautiful segue into the concept of how to say no and why to
Yeah,
say
yeah,
no. So maybe I'm gonna throw it again to you so that we can build off what you just said now. But how important is it for a person to be able to say no? And how can you cultivate that and why should you cultivate it?
yeah. So, I mean, for me, there's various ways of saying no, right?
Mm.
And I think you got to say no in different ways depending on the person that you're interacting with. Um, and obviously, I think as you get older, it's easier to say the word no, you know,
You practice it a
but
lot. especially when you have kids.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But I think when you're young or still practicing it, um, your actions can say no for you,
Sure.
you know, such as someone asking you a question and you just choosing not to answer at that specific point in time
Mm,
is a very good way to give an indication that you may not be interested in what you're doing. And depending on the maturity or the wisdom of the other person, they will then be able to determine, okay, cool, I don't think he's interested. If he's interested, he'll get back to me. If they're not on the mature side, or if they really want you to be there, yes, they'll follow up multiple times until they get a clear yes or no. So how you respond based on your actions for me is one way to say no. And then I think another way to say no is just by aligning yourself with certain activities, behaviors, and beliefs that may be contrary to what you're being asked, right? Um, I think sometimes you can say no before the question is even asked,
mm,
just through your behavior,
mhm.
you know? And a lot of the time, I believe, people don't ask if they know that they're going to get the answer no, especially if your behaviors and your actions make it very clear. Obviously, I make room for the chances and the people who are just persistent and brave, etc. But those people also can take a no most of the time. And the ones who can't take a no, unfortunately, those are the people that you lose in life
Yeah,
because they get angry, etc., etc., etc. So for me, those are the three ways of saying no. Delayed response, first one, or unclear response. Second one is through your actions. And then the last one is a straight, a straight no. So for me, those are my ways of saying no. And I think it's very important to be able to say no, because if you can't say no, then you're
yeah,
like a lost leaf, like lost leaf in autumn, and you're just gonna go in directions that you have no control over. And when you land somewhere where you don't want to be, you're just gonna continue getting lost and lost and lost and lost. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
that's very well said, my friend. Yeah, look, to say yes to the things that matter, you have to say no to the things that don't, right?
Well said.
You cannot do everything at the same time. You can't be everything to everybody at the same time. So if you try and do that, you will get nothing done and you will be nothing to anybody and you will disappoint everybody, including
Yeah.
yourself, you
Yeah.
know. So you also have to be able to say no to yourself.
Yeah.
That's the thing people often don't think about. But what is discipline, right? Discipline is saying no to yourself when the little voice in your head says, no, I don't want to do the thing that you say I must do, right? So,
Well said.
um, I also think a big part of saying no is realizing that to do anything that is important, you have to risk disappointing people
Yeah.
because everybody's on their own journey and everybody has their own mission and goal. And honestly, like, no one is going to make your life happen for you. It's all on you. It's
Yeah.
all, even your parents, your family, your friends, your wife, your kids, everybody's got their own agenda, right? I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just human. You're all living your story. So
Yeah.
it's like everyone's the hero of their own story, right? But you
For
are
sure.
the sideline character in everybody else's story.
100%. 100%. And I like how you mentioned that, right? About, everyone's running their own story, because I think a lot of people mix up no sometimes with you don't want to be with me, or you don't want to do what I want to do.
Mm,
But I mean, I'll give a really good example. Myself, generally, if someone invites me to a very late evening type event where there's going to be a lot of drinking and partying, not that I have anything against it, 85% of the time I'm going to say no.
yeah.
Not because I don't want to be in the environment or I don't want to be with you at the time, but I would rather spend that time sleeping.
Yes.
I'd rather spend that amount of money on a good breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And I would rather use that energy in the daytime because my sleep is important to me. So I'm not saying no to you. I am saying no to the fact that this is going to, for me, be a waste of money, a waste of valuable sleep.
Yeah.
And then number three, a waste of my time with you because I'm not getting the opportunity to interact directly and engage you in a conversation where we're both present.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to add that there because that's the unfortunate thing with no, is that it doesn't come with explanation, right? And your no may be perceived by someone else as you don't want to do what I want to do, or you don't want to spend time with me, unfortunately.
Yeah. And the reality of pursuing a life of meaning and growth and service is that often it means you have to leave some people behind.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it sucks, but it is what it is. There's no other way. And the thing is, like, there's really only one person that you have to take responsibility for making sure that they make it happen, and that's you, right? So
Yeah.
if they fit in the picture, then that's fantastic. But if they love you, then surely they want you to realize your potential, right? Like,
Yeah.
anybody that doesn't
Yeah.
want that is probably not the right person to have around you. And it's true that there are people like that.
Yeah.
That is the scary thing, is
Yeah, for sure.
realizing that there are people that are actively, whether that's conscious or subconscious, they are trying to undermine you on your journey for actualization, realization,
Yeah,
finding
for
yourself,
sure. For sure. For
which is,
sure.
yeah, when that's like a, you know, the blue pill, red pill, where you take the pill and you realize the matrix is real.
Yeah.
Like, that is like a matrix moment for, that was a matrix moment for me. And it
Yeah.
clarified a lot in my life of being like, oh, this is why I shouldn't listen to what the hell this person is saying. Because
Yeah.
every time I try and work on myself, they say, you try too hard, relax.
Yeah.
Every day?
And
Like,
and you know what I like about that one, right? Like I'm gonna use my personal experience here as an example, right? I'll speak to like my frugality as an example.
yeah,
To a lot of people, it's crazy, right? It's like live a little,
live a
you
little.
know, life is short,
Yeah,
you know. But like for me, saying no to some of these things is saying yes to a lot more.
yes.
And
And the thing,
yes, I understand that we all want to spend 5,000 Rand at the club and buy bottles or whatever. But unfortunately, for me, that's not my level. Like, I'm not saying you're not on my level.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? But for me,
yes,
that's not my level. For me, that's not enlightenment. That's not freedom. That's actually taking 10 steps back,
yeah,
you know? So there are people who do it subconsciously, and that's a prime example of that. You're boring. You don't do this. You don't live. You don't.
yeah,
They subconsciously are undermining your decisions. And I think this happens a lot in the social and financial areas of life.
yeah,
You know, when are you buying a property? When are you buying a new car? Why
yeah,
are you still wearing those clothes? Your watch is old.
yeah,
When are
yeah,
you going to travel? Like, you get what I'm saying? Um, to a certain degree, that's subconsciously undermining someone else's decision,
yes,
you know? And like, one thing I've realized is that like people who really know what they're doing, especially when it comes to money, yes, you get the people who are flamboyant in life, you know? Um, but the truly like wealthy or flamboyant people are not being braggadocious about it. It's relative to what they have,
yes,
right? And you can see it in their persona, you can see it in their demeanor. But then you get another batch who are trying to elevate themselves through these decisions.
mm,
And if you're not going to do it with them, they subconsciously undermine you for not tapping into that. So I
absolutely.
really love how you framed that, right? Because some people do it without knowing, unfortunately,
And
especially in those
yeah,
elements of life.
yeah, absolutely. And you know what the thing is like they don't see the vision that you have, that you're trying. They don't see the yes that you've
Yeah.
said yes to.
Yeah.
That necessitates the no's that are inconvenience.
So,
And they don't get that the mild irritation or frustration that they experience is nothing compared to the passion that you have for this vision. They don't
Yeah.
get it.
100%.
So it's like, this is
100%.
like, you don't understand. For me to say yes to this thing that you've asked me to do, my presence there is going to give you like this much.
Yeah,
It's going to
for
cost
sure.
you this much from
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do. Do you
Yeah.
understand? You know?
Yeah.
And
100%.
that's also why it's like, before this call, we were talking about advice and how everybody
Yeah.
has advice. And
Yeah.
honestly, I was thinking to myself, I think you'd probably be better off ignoring all advice and thinking for yourself. It's not optimal. It's not the best. Like, obviously, the best is to listen to great advice, but you're probably safer off just ignoring all advice, following your intuition and learning as you go along, than listening to everybody and then trying to cherry pick which is the great advice and which is not the great advice. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And like what you said there, right? Particularly around like learning to ignore some advice. Because also like you find that when you get an overwhelming amount of advice, you end up like actually lost because you're taking it all in, right?
Mm,
And I think that's where the importance of like mentors come in,
mm,
or people that you can run it past, right? Because I think your intuition will kind of give you a guide as to like what's very wrong or what's close to right.
yeah.
And it is then your responsibility to link your intuition or your inner gut to what is close to right,
Yes.
and then refine it accordingly in alignment with what you see for yourself in your
That's
mind and in your vision. Because the unfortunate thing with life also is that a lot of the advice that you get can actually limit what you've been preconceiving in your mind, right? If your goal was here, sometimes advice brings it here.
yes, absolutely.
You know, that realistic, oh, I've seen this, I've been through life. So you don't want to get too much of it because it's going to keep on
Yeah, yeah.
coming down, of course, depending on the type of advice that you're getting. And they say crazy is genius. At the beginning, everyone calls you crazy, right?
Well, it works.
Because you refuse to
So,
take the realistic advice,
yeah,
right? So you kept on going up, even though everyone said going down, keep on going down. And when you hit this pinnacle, everyone who had told you to go down now is praising you. So crazy is genius. And I like what you said there because when you ignore everything, you are choosing a tougher road of more failures, more pain.
mm,
Sometimes you actually ignore the advice that was true, and that even pains you even more, but the lesson learned is even
great.
greater because you can reflect on it, right? It all just depends on your capacity to enjoy the failure and accept it.
Yeah. And I think also, like, a great rule of thumb is probably you should only listen to advice from people who are living the kind of life that you would like to live.
Yeah,
That's probably a good start. It's not a guarantee, but I guess, it's like you shouldn't debate with everybody. People just let people give the advice that they want to give and then just do what you want to do anyways.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
like, okay, thank you, cool, and then go ahead and do it. But
yeah,
it's like I like listening to you and your advice because you're a couple of years ahead of me, and I think you are living a good life, like the kind of way I think I would like to live. So that's also why I find when I listen to you, generally the stuff that you say makes sense. So that's a good example of like not all
yeah,
advice is bad,
yeah.
but yeah, you can get caught up in listening to all the noise from
100%,
people who
100%.
you are already looking at them and you're like, why would I even listen to you in the first place?
100%. And I like the example that you used there, right? Because I also have like a lot of people in my life, named many, that
Mm.
I listen to, right? But the nice thing about it is that when you're dealing with really genuine people who are giving you like true
Sincere.
life advice
Yeah.
and sincere advice, within your wisdom, you can also tell the shortcomings of
Yeah.
the advice, right? And then you build on it,
Yeah.
you know? But like you said, because the person is actually living what they're saying, it's easier to take, digest, and then build on in such a way that is more aligned with your principle and your character and your elevated way of doing what that person is doing in a better and a more suited way to your lifestyle. So really, really, really good example there. Like take advice from people that you want to emulate. And
Mm.
I think everyone that you want to emulate, you should have a goal to, I'm not saying be better than them,
Sure. I
but
know
if someone's giving you advice, they're also giving you
an advantage.
portion, yeah, an advantage, right?
Yeah,
And within every single advice, people generally share their shortcomings or their flaws.
absolutely.
So it's your responsibility to take the full package and emulate the person in such a way that their advice has helped you implement what they're doing even better,
Yeah,
And that even gives that person fulfillment, right? To
yeah.
see you take on the advice and not only do it like they did, but 10 times better. It gives the other person meaning to life to be like, wow, So I really like how you said that. And I think it's something that everyone needs to be conscious of when you're listening to people and also when you're giving advice. Don't just give advice, but, be sincere in it so that the person taking the advice knows that it's not 100% accurate.
Mm.
And they also know that they need to like tune it to their to
Tailor
their
it.
to their lifestyle and
Yeah,
person.
tailor
Exactly.
it to your own
Exactly.
unique situation. Pick
Yeah,
and choose which tools you want to use for your operation. That's,
100%, 100%. So yeah, I know that kind of like deviated from the whole thing of saying no,
I think it
but
covers
I
it.
do
Yeah.
I do think it also does merge, right?
Yes.
Um, because yeah, saying no, like I said, is not always a direct response to no. It's just sometimes taking advice, nodding your head like we're doing now,
Yeah.
but getting home and saying no in my mind to the advice and
Absolutely.
just taking a couple of bits and pieces and then making it yours.
Well, that's exactly right. You don't always have to fight.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like you waste precious energy debating with a person and trying to convince them when you don't need to.
yeah,
Let them
yeah,
think what they want to think. And if they
yeah,
want to give you that advice, just say thank you very much and then
yeah,
carry on.
yeah. And also, I do know that they say not all free advice is great advice, but
Mm.
allowing people to really express themselves fully allows for you to also get to know them better.
Mm.
And it allows for you to get full context of what they're saying,
Yep.
you know? So if you cut someone off halfway into the advice that they're giving you, you cut yourself off context.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
you know. So sometimes just letting people talk is a really great thing, but there's also a line to it, right? Like what you were saying, if someone's giving advice but they're not living it, like like you can cut that person short immediately because
Mm.
like
No credibility.
you're yeah, like you're just talking. You're actually just wasting time. So yeah, very good points mentioned there, and yeah, I just wanted to top that off with that comment.
I think we smashed it out of the park with this one. Very happy.
Yeah.
You have any other points you want to touch on?
No, just from my side, obviously some concluding thoughts from you regarding um free advice.
Okay.
I know you do you do say it's very important to say no, but like for people out there that don't have access to advice and that depend on daily interactions to get advice and who cannot afford to ignore it because their internal intuition is not strong enough to identify right from wrong.
Mhm.
What would you advise someone in that situation to do when it comes to free advice? How do they not say no to something that could change their lives as they go through their day-to-days?
So I'm gonna cheat a little bit in this answer. I'm gonna say on the subject of cultivating that intuition, a great way to practice it is to imagine that you were giving advice to your best friend instead of yourself. And the reason why I say that is because it's so easy to give advice to everybody around you. You know, the situation is so clear. Of course, this is what they should be doing. Of course, that's what they should be doing. And you can actually do this for yourself as well, by removing yourself from the driver's seat and
Yeah,
going into the passenger and being like, okay, if I was this dude, what would I do? Because the
yeah,
answer is often very clear. It's just we have a lot of emotional hang up that makes it murky, you know.
for
Um,
sure, for
and
sure.
then
Because
again, the second thing I would say is be present because one, it's actually pretty rare for people to take the time to give advice. Um, more often than not, like I said, no one gives a shit about what your life's going to turn out as. So
Yeah,
it's on you, buddy.
yeah,
So
for sure.
pay attention to the examples around you, both good and bad, and use their behavior as advice. You know,
For sure.
if
Oh,
somebody in your work environment is killing it, you know, go, of course, go and ask them, what are you doing? But like, just ask yourself, why are they killing it? What is it about them that's so great? And
yeah.
then model it. You know, success leaves clues. That's not my quote, it's Tony Robbins' quote, but he
Oh,
talks about it a lot. Modeling, study the greats and see how can you take what they do and recreate it in your own life.
for sure. For
Because
sure. For sure.
you're a human being just like I am. You know, the thing that separates us is so often not talent, but choice. It's the choices that we make every day. So that's the advice that I would give is study the greats, study the people around you. If someone's doing a terrible
Sure.
job, ask yourself, what is it about them that you don't like? And then don't do
Sure.
that.
I love that. I love what you said there. Success leaves clues.
Mm,
And then if someone's doing well, study them, right?
absolutely. Study their example,
Don't
use their example
yeah,
as advice. That's what I would say.
for sure. For sure. For sure. So well said. So basically the long story short there is that you don't have to depend on what you hear
Mm,
as advice, but rather what you see in the person
yes.
as advice. Oh, lovely. I think that's a brilliant place to wrap it up there and well answered there.
Thank
But yeah, thanks for your time and yeah, I learned a lot in that episode. I
you.
hope you did too,
Honestly, like we've said before, everything that we're saying to everybody else, we're saying to ourselves.
for
So
sure.
I love these episodes because it keeps me honest and it keeps me on the right track. I don't want to
For
be a
sure.
hypocrite. So everything that I say, yeah, I try and live it myself as well. So
For
thank
sure. For
you.
sure. For sure.
I appreciate it.
Lovely.
All right,
Have a
everybody.
great Sunday further, guys.
We'll see you next time.